Right, girls, this is the second time I'm doing this because I've just spent 40 minutes recording the first one and it didn't save. So you can imagine how annoyed I am right now. Welcome again for the second time to the Women's Health webinar. This is everything that I got from the conference on Saturday from Sky Asquith. She's an amazing women's coach and nutritionist, so please do give her a follow. She also owns Our Society, who set up this conference, and she also presented with a lady called Chloe Stevens, who's a women's health physio and nutritionist. So let's get stuck in. What are we going to touch on today? So we'll be discussing the menstrual cycle, a typical healthy one, what hormones are related to our cycle, how these hormones may affect our training, and how we can change or adapt our training and nutrition to get the most out of each cycle phase. All of this is going to be based on a normal cycle, so won't necessarily apply to those on contraception unless you have quite a normal, regular monthly cycle, or those who suffer with PCOS, endometriosis, or who have lost their periods previously. Okay, so first things first, the menstrual cycle. We have 4 phases of our cycle, which is the follicular phase, the ovulation phase, luteal, and menstruation. I've got a mini graph here, which I will blow up on the next slide, and I'll go over in a bit more detail. The 2 main phases that we have in our cycle are the follicular and the luteal. A normal cycle can last anywhere from 22 to 35 days. Our follicular phase, which is the first part of our cycle, can last anywhere between 10 and 21 days. Then comes ovulation. Then we head into the luteal phase for around 12 to 15 days ovulation. Everybody's is different depending on age, your physical and mental stress, and your natural hormones. So physical stress in terms of like activeness, and mental stress, obviously, if you have a stressful job or perhaps a stressful time at home, that may impact your cycle. Another thing that Sky touched on was if you had a particularly stressful month, perhaps your period is a week or two late, or perhaps even early, if you're adding more physical stress onto your body. For example, my period was 2 weeks early this month because I've been hammering HYROX training, which makes sense. So here is the enlarged version of the complete menstrual cycle based on a normal, healthy cycle. So obviously you can see here all of our hormones are pretty stable, pretty low as we come into our menstruation during our follicular phase. So our follicular phase includes the bleed. Once we've come out of our bleed, depending on how long it lasts, obviously this is very different from person to person, we enter our lovely happy time where our estrogen peaks. This blue line here peaks all the way up. This is when you're going to be feeling energetic, sexy, social occasions are going to be flying, you're going to be loving life, going to be smashing your training, going to be feeling good, waking up early, feeling refreshed, all of the good stuff. Then hits ovulation, and then obviously we can see the blue line of estrogen dip here, and the green line of progesterone quite clearly shoots up. I'll be delving into estrogen and progesterone a little bit more as the webinar goes on, but you can see visually here what a typical healthy menstrual cycle looks like. Obviously everybody's phases, even if you are perfectly healthy, everyone's phases are going to be different, shorter, longer, more intense, etc. Okay, so our 2 main hormones in female physiology are estradiol, aka estrogen, and progesterone. Estrogen is our really amazing, beautiful, stunning sister who keeps us going, makes us feel great, makes us feel sociable, happy, energetic, all the good stuff. It also has a lot of very, very important roles in the body and is a key part in fat deposition, i.e. our boobs and our nice thick thighs that save lives. It protects us from cardiovascular disease and metabolism disease. Our basal metabolic rate development and maintenance, promotes muscle growth, increases intramuscular triglyceride, which is basically just fuel for muscle contractions during exercise, helps towards our vascular health, our cognitive function, and our sleep function. Progesterone is the ugly sister, the pest, pest. This is our relaxing hormone. So this is the progesterone that peaks in the luteal phase, which is the reason why we feel pretty shit, to be honest. So it's our relaxing hormone. It relaxes all of the muscles in the body, makes us feel relaxed, etc. It's why period poos are such a thing. They are on another level. It's because our down there region is so relaxed and our poos are so frequent and weird around our period. It obviously supports menstruation, influences pregnancies, it's a catabolic hormone, so it breaks things down. It can impact sleep quality and block receptors to other hormones, interfering with fluid balance, which is why we tend to get so bloated around the end of our luteal phase into our menstruation phase, because that's what comes next. So basically, when our progesterone peaks and we come to the end of our luteal phase, body realizes that we're not pregnant because progesterone supports pregnancy in our luteal phase, realizes we're not pregnant, releases an egg, we bleed. I feel like I'm at the doctor's office. Okay, so should we alter our macros? Bottom line is no, not dramatically, but we can benefit from some changes to our nutrition during different phases of our cycle. So these are fairly technical terms and you don't really need to know any of these, but if you're interested, in our follicular phase, our fat and protein oxidation is down, but our carbohydrate oxidation is up. Our glycogen storage is down, our efficiency of glycogen supercompensation is up. So basically, increasing our muscle glycogen stores above your baseline level to improve endurance exercise performance. So it makes us feel good, happy, energized. Our HIIT-based sessions are really effective, stuff like that. In our luteal phase, fat and protein oxidation are up. Carbohydrates is down, our resting energy expenditure is up, so we burn more energy and we have a bigger expenditure in our luteal phase during our period and stuff. Glycogen storage is up and efficiency of glycogen supercompensation is down. We don't need to touch on that too much. And obviously I've said this once before because I've already recorded this. So should we alter our macros? What could we do differently? During our follicular phase, because we rely on carb oxidation, and it's the highest of the three macros, carbs, protein, fats, it would be beneficial to eat a few more carbs than normal. The body is relying on carbs more so than fats during this phase. And as we all know, carbohydrates are the preferred form of energy for the body, followed by fats. So it'd be good to increase your carbohydrate intake here, and I will explain that a little bit more as the webinar goes on. In our luteal phase, we are relying on fat. We've got a lot of fat and protein oxidation, so this could mean we'd benefit by an increase of proteins and fats alongside calories. I touch on that a little bit more later on, but we would benefit from a few more calories in our luteal phase, and I will go on to explain why. Fat oxidation is increased during this phase, so a increase of 20% or more of our total daily energy input coming from fats can help meet demand of sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone, and it helps absorb fat-soluble vitamins, so vitamin A, K and D, so things like, so basically we can't absorb them as effectively as in our follicular phase. Vitamin D helps with keeping us happy, keeping us basically the same effect that the sun has on us. Makes us feel good, makes us feel energized, stuff like that. So we do struggle to absorb those fat-soluble vitamins. So eating more fats like our avocado, salmon, nuts, dark chocolate, things like that are going to be really beneficial. And it may be a good idea to increase our protein intake spaced throughout the day. There's also a lot of evidence and a lot of things knocking around on Instagram and stuff and other literature around how much protein you can actually absorb per meal. There's not an awful lot of evidence, and there's not an awful lot of evidence that's tested on women. They're all primarily tested on men. So I'm not going to go into that, but if you do want to have a little look at that study, I will link the PubMed study if you want to have a look at it, but it's nothing I would worry about if I were you. Okay, so changes in appetite. How many of us have experienced changes in appetite during our period? This is totally normal, but we don't really know why we experience these changes in appetite, other than perhaps our total daily energy expenditure needed to be increased and other things that I'm going to touch on. So changes in appetite regulation during the menstrual cycle are suggested to be related to blood sugar regulation. It has also been proposed that insulin responsiveness is influenced by the sex hormones progesterone and estrogen, with insulin sensitivity being lower in the luteal phase, which may be the reason why we feel so tired and sluggish. In the follicular phase, they noted that women had lower glucose and insulin responses, less hunger and energy intake. So we are using less energy, so we are burning less calories. So this is why it'll be good for us to go into more of a deficit, which I will touch on. But generally, we feel good, we're not as hungry, we don't need as much energy to keep us going, and we just feel generally energized because we're not using up so much energy just to keep going, unlike in the luteal phase. In the luteal phase, we have poor metabolic response, less fullness and increased intake. And I don't know about you guys, but I am a bottomless pit the week before my period, which makes a lot of sense. It really does make a lot of sense. The menstrual cycle can affect food consumption with higher consumption of sweet, salty, fatty, and high protein foods during the luteal phase. This can be because of an increase in intake. So things like our body temperature increases as we prepare for our period. We need more calories at rest just to generally tick along, basically, in the luteal phase. But I will touch on that a little bit more. Restricting foods like these do increase a preference for salt or fat, and emotional eating is most common during the mid-luteal phase. So when that progesterone is when it's at its peak, that is when you want to think about coming into more of perhaps a maintenance phase or a slight surplus. I, for one, and I know a few of you guys do struggle with cravings and being really hungry during this time of the month. So I would really, really like to sit down with you and organise a bit of a change with your calories during those times of the month, just to avoid things like if you suffer with binge episodes or if you're overeating particularly. I mean, I love chocolate, and there is actually, apparently scientists have actually labelled chocolate as essential during the luteal phase. It just brings us so much joy. Women experiencing PMS symptoms report greater cravings, and I feel like PMS is just negatively, it's got such a negative connotation and association, like especially like on films and stuff, like you're PMSing and stuff like that. But really, a lot of us do suffer with PMS symptoms like mood swings, feeling irritated or like fairly like low, headaches, bloating, like changing the skin, so getting a little bit spottier, and breast tenderness. Like I said, on the webinar, it actually said that chocolate is commonly craved and is considered irreplaceable, as confirmed by science. But we don't actually know why we experience greater cravings during PMS. The cause is actually unclear. Luteal and pre-menstrual phases may intensify changes in hunger that are already observed within calorie restriction. So making sure we don't restrict our calories too much, even if we are in a deficit. So what can we apply to our nutrition for appetite changes? So in our follicular phase, we're feeling good, feeling sexy, feeling sociable, feeling good. Post-menstruation, so post-bleed, could be a good time to diet. This is where our hunger is at its least. During the menstruation part of our cycle, it may be good to maintain more normal macros and more normal calories because your cravings may be higher and your appetite may be higher. In your luteal phase, we've got a decrease in insulin sensitivity, so we can't produce heaps of energy through glucose. So maybe a higher calorie intake would be beneficial, a very small one between 50 to 300 calories. This is why it's really important for you guys to tell me your hunger and really elaborate on that, because we can look at changing your calories week by week, because unfortunately, always women, no 2 weeks the same. So in our luteal phase, let's increase or prioritize our protein and make sure we include our chocolate or our craved foods to avoid too much emotional eating. It's a real thing, but we want to avoid that overconsumption. And during our luteal phase, it can be a good time to take a diet break. So is our menstrual cycle phase impacting our performance outcomes? 15 studies. In 15 studies, only one performance outcome was affected by menstrual cycle phase, while in 20 other studies, there was no evidence of any impact. While many studies have concluded that performance does not differ between menstrual cycle phases, inconsistencies were observed in the studies that did detect an effect, so there was no control group, I'm pretty sure Sky said. Late luteal phase was commonly reported to impair strength and aerobic performance, while late follicular phase was more frequently associated with reduced anaerobic performance, so that's higher intensity. Your strength in your aerobic performance is like weightlifting, anything that's not like super, super high intensity. You go over a threshold, so there's an aerobic and an anaerobic threshold depending on the intensity of the exercise. So in your anaerobic performance, so for example, things like HIIT, CrossFit, things like that is more anaerobic, whereas aerobic is more strength, like slower movements, still a high heart rate, but not as intense. Okay. Next, so is it all in our heads? 40 healthy women completed this study and they assessed performance, hormone levels and perception across 79 points in their cycle. Overall, they found that there were no meaningful changes in performance related to hormones, but rather in their perception, with some slightly lower performance or increased negative perceptions in the late luteal or early follicular. So late luteal as in the progesterone's coming down a little bit, we're leveling out, we're coming into menstruation / early follicular. That is also when we bleed. This is actually becoming a really interesting trend in literature, and it does suggest that it could be due to perception. So it's pretty much you just saying, oh, I'm on my period, or oh, I'm due on, I'm feeling a bit weak, I didn't sleep great, blah, 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 blah. We're basically blaming our period because there's so many people that have always told us, you're going to feel weaker during your period, which even I believed, but there is actually very limited supporting data, and it's more so how we perceive this. So phase-based training, follicular-based training, so we can split our training into 2 different phases. So we can either front load into our follicular phase, or we can backload into our luteal phase, or we can be consistent. The next slide does go into that a little bit. But follicular-based training, so putting basically all of your hardcore training into the first 2 weeks of your cycle, resulted in greater strength and muscle mass than in the luteal phase. So if you're going to do it, front load rather than back load. There were no differences in strength between the follicular training and normal training, so keeping it consistent throughout the month. Follicular phase training resulted in greater lean mass than luteal and regular training. However, these differences don't appear meaningful, and it also doesn't take into consideration those who are taking contraception. I actually didn't know, but when you are taking contraception, it is a fake period. You do experience all like very, very similar cycle symptoms, but it is a fake period. So essentially your hormones aren't really regulating the way that they should be. So if you can, keep it as consistent as you can. But does that mean you're going to be hitting new weeks every week? We're not men, so no. Our hormones are still going to fluctuate in some way, whether it affects our sleep or our nutrition has been affected or whatever. We're not going to hit the same weeks every single week, and we're not going to hit PBs every single week. So making sure you listen to your body is the most important thing. And whilst I may give you weights to hit every single week, I still want you to really listen to your body. And if you think, fucking hell, I'm not going to hit that this week. I managed to get it last week, but you know what? It's feeling too heavy. Listen to your body. That is the most important thing that I can tell you. Okay, little sip. Should we periodize to your period? So like I said, follicular-based training may be better than luteal-based training. So that is front-loading. So that's getting predominantly all your sessions done in the first 2 weeks and then kind of backing off in the last 2 weeks. If you were to periodize, first 2 weeks of training versus the last 2, focusing on hammering those first 2. Those last 2 can maybe be used to like deload or go lighter or reduce the frequency or intensity, or maybe do things like yoga. Currently though, we can't confidently say that follicular training is better than regular. It makes no difference to strength or hypertrophy. Hypertrophy is basically just muscle growth depending on the rep sets and rest time. A lot of you are in hypertrophy reps at the moment as we're trying to gain muscle mass. But overall, it's better to be consistent week in, week out. That doesn't necessarily mean to hit your PBs week in, week out. Just to be consistent with your training, so having 3 or 4 training sessions every single week and just trying your best. Work to your trends and your symptoms. Please keep track of these using Apple Health or Flow or something. Just, it'd be really interesting to compare them month by month. See, like, do you know what I've got? There is the same week every month that I'm starting to, take a dip, or I'm feeling my best, or whatever it is. So please do make sure you work to your symptoms. Macro and micronutrients for active women, which you all are active women. So in our follicular phase, we could potentially increase pre-workout carbs, total daily carbs due to carb oxidation. We can match protein intake to activity. So if you're particularly more active one week, then making sure you get a bit more protein than normal. Make sure we're maintaining adequate fat intake, because as women, we do need more fat than men to stabilize our sex hormones. And caffeine may improve early cycle performance decreases. So if you find that your performance is decreasing slightly in the early part of your cycle, so the start of your follicular phase, caffeine may help with this. In our luteal, actually, I just want to touch on caffeine that I did in the other webinar that didn't save, on caffeine and how I would prefer you to use it. I get a lot of questions in the gym around pre-workout, or, what should I take? When should I take it? Is pre-workout good? Is it worth it? I don't think pre-workout is worth it. If you're a coffee drinker, stick to your coffee. Your pre-workout is probably about the same amount as a double espresso, maybe a triple espresso, so it is higher in caffeine content, but for pre-workout, it does state on the tin not to consume any more caffeine, whereas obviously with coffee, you can do that. Additionally, pre-workout has lots of added things, unnatural added shit, whereas coffee is just a natural stimulant. So I would always go for coffee. One thing I would recommend though is no caffeine after 2 o'clock, absolute cut off time, 2 o'clock. Your caffeine will stay in your body for 10 hours. And whilst you might think, oh, I'm immune to coffee, I don't feel the effects of caffeine, you do. Caffeine blocks the receptors in your brain that tell you you're tired. They block them completely. So if we keep topping this up, our body isn't going to have chance to relax and realize that we're tired, take a bit of time before bed. So please make sure you're stopping your caffeine by 2 o'clock minimum. I don't want to see anybody in the gym with a Monster at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Not that I do, but this is your warning not to start doing that. Because when I see people come in the gym 6 o'clock in the afternoon with a Monster, you're mad. You're going to be up till 3 o'clock in the morning, you crazy person. And even if people are, I'm immune, you're not. Nobody's immune to caffeine. Okay, moving on. In the luteal phase, it may be beneficial to increase protein intake by 10 to 20% more because we do use protein and fat oxidation for our luteal phase. Maybe a good idea to increase pre or intra-workout carbs. So pre-workout carbs, as you all should be eating your pre-workout carbs, please. Thank you. Nice, fast-acting carbohydrates. Or slow, depending on when you're training. But maybe introducing some sweeties mid-workout. I will be taking some sweets on Sunday to Hyrox to keep me going. They're amazing, fast-acting carbohydrate, and there's plenty of carbs in some Haribos. So if you do struggle mid-workout, perhaps you're halfway through and you think, fucking hell, I'm knackered, get some sweets down you, or maybe a Squares bar, something like that. So it's fast-acting. Decrease total carbs for increase of fats, and maybe increase our calories over around 3 to 12%. Vitamin D and omega-3 may also help pain-related PMS symptoms, as well as magnesium, which can decline in this phase. We struggle to absorb magnesium, so supplementing that in the second half of your cycle may be really beneficial, if you remember. If you don't, it's not the end of the world. Just making sure you're adding foods rich in these vitamins, or supplementing if needs be. Okay, so this is the last slide that I really want to touch on, is the hierarchy of needs for menstruating women, which we all are. As far as I'm aware, we are all menstruating, we're all bleeding every week, whether it's if it's like clockwork or not, we are bleeding in some way. So had a really good chat with one of my clients recently about she wasn't feeling the most energized, and I think we're very, very quick to blame our period, or I'm due on next week, feel a bit shit, like well, it is what it is, instead of blaming our cycle on this. Our cycle really should not be affected the way that a lot of us are. Like, I do suffer with my periods for the first day or two, but we can really avoid these pains, and we can really avoid things like that if we just prioritize the basics. Are we getting enough sleep? Are we prioritizing our macros and micros? Micros being vitamins, minerals. Are we staying hydrated? Are we sleeping well? Do we have a sleep routine? Do we have a bedtime routine? Do we have a morning routine? Are we getting out in the sunlight? Are we getting out for fresh air? Are we getting out for a walk? Are we talking to ourselves positively instead of being like, look in the mirror like, you look like shit? Let's not do that. So adequate hydration and overall energy availability, which I'm not going to touch on too much, but essentially making sure you've got enough calories / energy available after things ticking off your BMR and ticking off your training. So if I'm in a calorie deficit, and if my for example, my maintenance calories are 2,000 calories, if I'm eating 1,800, if I'm eating 1,800, my BMR is 1,600, say for example, I've only got 200 calories to last me technically through my training and just generally getting through the day, like walking the dog, making dinner, putting the clothes away, having a shower, things like that. Actually, like even me moving my hands now, this is all energy that I'm burning. So, it's a low amount of energy that we've got left. So that's something new that I learned, which I am delving into a little bit more to help some of you that might be struggling with energy. Second up is macros and micros. Are we getting our protein, fats, and carbs in? We're not skipping our carbs because they are the body's most favoritist ever form of energy, followed by fats, and making sure we have a decent amount of fat. Now, one thing I want to touch on that everybody's struggling with is going over their fat macro. Fats are your last thing that I want you to worry about. I want you to get your salmon in, get your avocado in. Typically, fats are the highest gram of calories out of all the macronutrients. So naturally, things that are higher in fat are going to be higher in calories. Doesn't mean it's bad for us. I want us to be focusing on more of a Mediterranean diet, getting our olive oil in there if we can. even if it's just a little tiny drizzle, more avocado, more dark chocolate, more nuts, more seeds, more whole grains, things like that. Are we prioritizing those macronutrients, and are we getting our vitamins in? Are we eating fruit and veg? Come on. Training intensity, duration, and type comes third. So are you making sure your training is intense enough, or are we backing off where needed? How long is this for, and what type are we doing? Are we doing CrossFit? Are we going swimming? Are we going dancing? What are we doing? Are we boxing? What are we doing, Making sure our intensity is meeting our macros, our micros, and our sleep, and our energy availability, making sure they meet all together. Because if I'm on, God forbid, someone would give me a 1400 calorie recommendation. If I'm on 1400 calories and I'm training 6 days a week, that is a recipe for disaster, people. An absolute recipe for disaster. I'm going to be very, very poorly. And if you've gone on a low calorie diet before, you will know what I mean. Then comes hormones, then comes individualization. So they're at the bottom of the pile. Top being, let's nail the basics. Managing recovery. Creatine, I'll say it till the cows come home. If you haven't ordered your creatine yet, bloody order it now. Don't be scared. It is the most researched supplement in the world in the fitness industry. Creatine is going to benefit your performance, your muscle mass, your strength, your recovery. As well as that, there's a lot of new evidence around brain health, especially in women, especially as we get older. So please, for the love of God, buy your creatine. You need to take it every single day, 5-gram scoops. You can put it in your water. I literally put mine in water, literally that much water. Quick swig, quick whim, like whiz around, knock it back, done. You can get non-flavoured ones, you can get flavoured ones, you can get a pill form, you can get powder form. I prefer powder form. Whey protein, if you're not getting enough protein in your diet, which a lot of us don't, and I understand. I have whey protein in my porridge every single morning, and then make sure I don't really supplement any more protein throughout the day. I try to get protein in my actual food. But obviously I highly recommend it. I highly recommend whey protein. If I'm going to say anything, and it's a bit controversial, I know the juice proteins are delicious, but they are filled with so much shit. Please try and go for the purest form of whey or soy or pea protein, something like that, anything like that, if you're a vegan. Yeah, my protein, PhD nutrition is good. IF supplements is incredible. We sell that at the gym. That's the best protein I've ever had. ESN nutrition is good. Alice Jennings has got a code for 10% off. If you follow her, get her code. Supporting the gals around Chester. All of them are great. Obviously, depending on your price range. For the love of God, do not get diet whey. It tastes like arsehole. So make sure you get the proper stuff. Magnesium, fish oil, so omega-3 and D. Vitamin D is a non-negotiable. Please take this every single day. Start low, 500 to 1,000 IUD, and then increase. We just do not get enough sunshine, and it's not good for us. Zinc, I don't know an awful lot about, but Sky did recommend. Making sure we've got a solid sleep routine, and including our HIIT yoga, cardio, making sure we keep our cardiovascular health. And there's a lot of supporting evidence around PCOS and endometriosis girls who should be doing their cardio more so. It's very, very beneficial for our health. And then looking at increasing calories if needs be. Right, bottom line, last bit. Most women are underfueled, have erratic eating patterns, no routine, they overfeed, they under or overtrain. Remember that your sleep, nutrition, schedule, and stress management are the most important factors that will impact you as a person more than your menstrual cycle. So making sure we have the absolute basics. I always have a time within an hour or hour and a half window that I have my breakfast, my lunch, and my dinner, and wherever I can squeeze snacks in, I will. I always try and have a bigger snack at 3-4 o'clock because that's when I tend to have clients. I'm usually in the gym till 8, and then I try and have my dinner as soon as I get home, so I'm not waiting too long until I go to bed. But really, really nailing the basics is the biggest thing that I could possibly ever tell you. None of the other things matter if you're not staying hydrated, you don't have good sleep, you're not making sure you're getting some sort of sunlight, you're not stretching your legs, you're not getting some exercise in, you're making sure you're eating your macros and micros. And whilst, yes, absolutely a balanced diet, are we making sure we get our protein in, our carbs, making sure we're recovering, we're refueling? A lot of you are doing a lot of activities. Are you eating enough? Your BMR is going to increase the more active you are. So you might want to look at increasing your calories again, even if you're in a deficit. So getting those absolute basics done before we look at anything else. Now, I really, really hope you've all enjoyed that. And if there's anything you want me to go on in more detail, then please message me or send me a voice note if there's anything you're a little bit confused about. Obviously, everyone has a link to this so you can go over it again. And I hope you find that beneficial. I really want to do more of these webinars, and I really hope this saves, because I'll be really, really sad if it doesn't. But I want to do more of these webinars for you girls, and I want to do more like Monday motivation ones. So jump on and talk about a topic, and I want you to keep giving me things that you want to learn about, because I don't know what you don't know. I don't know what you want to know about. So please keep pushing it. Creatine could be a big one. I could look into it, or anything like that. Like, please just let me know. I hope you found it really beneficial, girlies, and I'll speak to you soon.